Today, I'm helping a friend of mine build a Cinagro garden in his yard. And I figured this would be a perfect opportunity to show you guys just how easy it is to build one of these gardens. I'm going to give you some tips and tricks on how to cut your lumber, how to form it together, how to keep it square, how to keep it level. And that's what's coming up next on Cinagro Gardens. All right, so the first thing that we're going to do is source some great materials. Now this material here is pressure treated lumber. You can see we've got our 2x6s, and when we source lumber, what we're wanting to do is take a look down the edge of the lumber, and we're going to tell if it's got any crooks or cups or if it has any bow in it. This board is pretty straight, and so this is a great example of what we're looking for. The next thing that we want to be looking for along with the lumber is knots. Notice how this does not have many knots at all. This area right here, this is a knot. That area is very, very hard, and it will be difficult to put a screw into it, but it's not on the edge of the board, so we'll be fine. The rest of these pieces have a few knots here and there, and you will find those knots, but you want to keep those knots to a minimum. Hey, you can find the materials list, the cut list, and the tools list. If you scroll down to the bottom of the page, there is a place where you can click on that and print it off. Being a shop teacher for 12 years taught me a lot of nice tricks to use for construction. The one thing that I'd like for you to think about right now when you're taking a look at that cut list is I want you to cut all of your longest boards first. That way, if you mess up on one, you can always cut a little bit more off and then use the ones that you hadn't cut before. So we're going to start by cutting all of our longer boards, and those are 144 inches or 12 foot. A really neat trick for cutting lumber is to measure the distance between your saw blade and the shoe of the base of your saw. I'm going to measure from here over, and I'm going to find that my shoe measures right at 5 inches. We're going to use our speed square, and when we go to measure, we're going to subtract 5 inches so that we can put the shoe right next to our speed square, and that's going to be the guide for us to be able to make straight, clean, 90-degree cuts. So you can see that our 12-foot 2x6 is actually a little longer than 12 feet. And so for us to make this cut, I'm going to place the speed square underneath my tape measure, and I'm going to subtract that 5 inches that we had measured from the blade to the shoe. So we'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're going to be at 139. So now we're going to take and check our work, and we are about a 1/16 of an inch off, and you know what? That's going to be good enough for this build. I'm going to cut the rest of all the lumber, and we're going to place everything in its place. So now that I've got both of my 12-footers cut, I need to cut the other 12-foot 2x6s to 141 inches. The reason why is because I need to have 3 inches shorter because of the two 12-footers that it's going to connect. Now, if you don't understand that, that's okay. You'll see how that works here in just a second. But the other 4 12-footers now need to be cut to 141 inches. Ooh. Now that we've got our 12-footers cut, we're going to cut our 10-footers. And the first thing that you want to do is we want to cut one of these as a template. Now, what I mean by template is there are tools that go inside of the Cinagro garden, and they need to be able to fit in there. And so what we're going to do is we're going to err on the side of caution on both ends. So I've made the plot dibble a little less than 30 inches, and we're going to make our beds a little bit wider than 30 inches. So I want you to cut this first one to 30 1/8, maybe even 30 1/4 if you don't have a ton of confidence in your cutting ability. Now I'm going to mark this as our template, and you can make a mark that says template, or you could just put a few X's on it. It doesn't matter. But what we want to do is we want to have this as a distinctive piece, because we're going to allow this to be our spacer to place all of our boards. Now, as you can see, I'm at 30 1/8 of an inch, and that is going to give us a little bit of space. So after cutting our template out of one of our 10-foot pieces, we're going to keep the other 10-foot piece solid. So don't cut on it yet. We're going to continue cutting on this 10-foot piece. And what we need to cut is we need to cut a 60-inch and a 30-inch. Start with the 60-inch piece. That way, if the material came to you a little bit shy, which sometimes it does, we will still have enough left over for the 30-inch piece. And then we'll get the rest of our pieces out of this other 10-foot board. So our last board that we're going to cut is 78 inches. And this piece is by far the most wasteful piece, because the rest of the waste from this entire garden is setting right here. Hey, when we go to lay out the orientation of our boards, what we're looking for is we want those 12-footers to be at the front. So this is going to be where we're going to walk or step into the garden. And so you want the 12-footers to be in the front and the back. And those ones that we had cut to 141 are within the bed. And that is the reason why we had to cut them to 141 inches. So take a look at this. Since we have 1.5 inches here, and we have 1.5 inches on the end board down there, we're going to go and measure back to here, and we're gonna get to 12 feet. So the first thing that we want to secure is the outside corners of our bed. When we go to do that, we want to be sure that we are flush on the top and flush on the edge. So what I like to do is I'll start the screw, get it in there decently, and then hold on to this with your left hand. Put a little pressure on there, snug that in to where it catches, and then continue driving it. Now I went a little bit into the material, which is okay, but the best way to fasten a screw is to fasten it to where it is flush with the surface. That's a little bit better. So now we have a very tight, good joint. One other thing that I'd love to mention yet again is stainless steel screws. These stainless steel screws will be out in the weather for literally a few years, and they'll look just like this. And so I've had them sitting out in a garden, and I've had them there for a couple of years, and they look just like they do out of the box. And so that gives me quite a bit of confidence on placing them within a Cinagro garden. The next thing that we're going to do after fastening the corners of our garden bed is we're going to use this spacer that we had cut. Now this is 30 1/8 of an inch, and I'm going to place this within each one of our beds. And it is going to serve as a template to keep my beds to be 30 1/8 of an inch wide. After you fasten that, you will find that this template may be a little difficult to get out. So what you can do is just pry it up from the bottom and it will work better that way. So now I'm going to go to the other end and the other side, and I'm going to place the template in on the ends and screw those boards in as well. All right, so now it's time to place our 78-inch piece in the very back, and I'm going to put 2 of the 5-footers right here, and then the other 60-inch or 5-footer here, and this guy is going to go into this spot for the walkway. But keep in mind, I'm going to still use my template as I attach this piece right here. So as you can see, this is our walkway right here, and this walkway was designed to be just wide enough in order for someone to be comfortable kneeling or crouching down in it. All right, so we're doing the front bed that is to the right of the walkway, and I want to take my tape measure and I want to measure between the end to this member here. And what we're looking for is, since this board is 60 inches, we're going to take 60 minus 1.5 inches, which gives us 58.5. And I'm going to make sure that I am going to be at 58.5 when I go to put in the screws. So I'm going to pull that over just a little bit, and I'm going to screw this in right here to keep our walkway straight. So the second to the last place that we're going to use our template is back on the back garden. So we're going to place our 78-inch member in here, and we'll attach it here and then the other side. So we're going to put screws from the outside into that template. Make sure that you are not placing the template on the outside. Place it to the inside so that the width of our beds are correct. The last part that we need to secure for the framework of our bed is this middle section. So when we place this middle section along that board, we want to have 22 inches between the front bed and this middle bed. All right, so the next thing that we need to do is place our stakes around our bed, and it's very simple. We just want to be about 2 inches away from each corner, and then we're going to also place stakes right in the middle of the 12-foot bed. And then we're going to be looking at coming into the inside. Now on the inside of the bed, we want to be 24 inches in on the back, 24 inches in from both sides on this right side. Then we need to place a stake on each corner of those inside beds, and we will be in great shape. The next thing that we need to do is we need to place our stakes into the ground, but before we get going on that, we need to find the high spot. So we're going to look at each corner, we're going to find the highest corner, we're going to attach our stakes, and then we can bring everything up, or each corner up, to make everything level. So to do that, we're going to go and just take a look at each board. It looks like we are higher over here. We're going to come over to this point. We're going to lift up. Looks like we are going down that way. So we know that it's not going to be up there. It's probably going to be one of these corners back here. So let's take a look at this. And we're going to find that if we lift up, we get level. So this corner over here is our high spot. So we're going to attach our stakes to this corner first. We want to have these stakes come flush with the highest point. So again, this is the highest corner of our bed, and we're going to grab some shorter screws. These are the 1 5/8" screws. Squaring up this bed is super simple. All we're going to do is come from our high point where we're attached to the ground, and we're going to come over all the way to the other side of the bed on the opposite corner, and I'm at 202 inches and 5/8. Now I'm going to measure diagonally on the other side from that corner to that corner, and we're going to make sure that they're equal. Okay, so measuring the other diagonal, I found that I'm at 205 inches, and so we're not square. But that's really easy to fix because we were at 202 and 5/8 before, so I'm just going to pull back on this, and I'm going to go until I get to the point to where I'm splitting the difference between those two, and I'm at 203 and 7/8. We're at 203 and 3/4. Now I'm going to go measure that first diagonal again and make sure that they're the same. All right, so now that we're squared up, we've driven a stake in to the opposite corner. All right, so I'm going to raise this up, and we're just going to pry up to where we get level on our bubble, and now we can attach our frame to the stake that we had driven. All right, so now we're going to level our center piece or our center bed, and then we're going to place cardboard on the walkways. Now the cardboard can be slipped in underneath of the 2x6s, and we're also going to place a good pile of wood chips on the inside of our walkways. Be sure that that center part is level before attaching the rest of the screws to your stakes. The next thing that we're going to do is just wet down this cardboard. And so what that's going to do is just start to degrade the cardboard a bit. But the main thing is that it's going to keep the cardboard down and not blow in the wind. Microcilia fungi can thread its way 60 feet deep into the ground. My favorite ecologist, Frank Egler, once said, "Nature is not as complex as you think. It's more complex than you can think." The reason why we're going to put cardboard down, soak it, and then put wood chips on top is because we're creating an entire ecosystem here. And so we don't want to use any weed barrier. We sure do not want to use any product like preen. So instead of using anything that is chemical, we're just going to keep it natural. We're going to put wood chips down. What this is going to do is the wood chips will continue to degrade and feed the soil and keep the microcilia happy, and then it's also going to keep us happy because after a rain or after we have this maybe covered and we have a netting system set up, we don't have to worry about getting our shoes muddy or dirty. All right, so we're done framing in our Cinagro garden. The only thing that we have left to do is to take the biomass out of the beds and fill in with compost. Now, there's nothing else that goes in the beds. It's strictly only compost. Speaking of compost, there is a fantastic place on the website under lessons. If you go down to the lesson on compost, there's some really great tips on how to source good compost. I hope that you enjoy your build. If you have any problems or if you have any questions, do not hesitate to give me a call, text me, message me, email me, do whatever you need to do to get a hold of me. And please always remember that Cinagro Gardens exists to empower and encourage everyone to grow.